Hello and welcome to another episode of Stanning Stanley Tucci. I'm David.
And I'm Hannah, and guys, we have a wild one for you today. It's a live wire.
It's a live wire. We have Prelude to a Kiss, 1992. This is a film based on a Broadway play. Um,
Yes,
I'm not entirely sure if Tucci was in the stage production,
he was not, but
but
Alec
I
Baldwin was.
Alec Baldwin was. Meg Ryan was not.
No.
Uh, this is one of the early sort of Meg Ryan romantic magical realism dramas of the 90s, uh,
Yeah.
along with the one that she did with Nicolas Cage about angels and Kate and
I
Leopold, which had time travel and
I feel like the
Batman.
only reason people today still really know this movie at all is because Meg Ryan is in it. Otherwise, they would have no idea what this was, you
But I
know?
think that I think it's also the rest of the cast, which are also sort of bizarrely relevant figures today.
It's
Alec
it's
Baldwin,
true.
Stanley Tucci, and also our whomst we also for this week, Kathy Bates has like a walk-on role
Whomst we
as
also.
as just the daughter of the old man who, spoiler alert, switches bodies with Meg Ryan at her wedding,
The
resulting
hijinks
in
ensue.
hijinks, but more like waxing poetic about like the nature of life and experience and oh women and men and oh to give birth and to be a man and to be old, to be young, to be of this mortal flesh and whatnot, and
hmm
so on and so forth,
I
and
mean,
to
it's
be a
a
communist.
play. Like, of course.
Right. But I think I think this is the first movie that Tucci is in that isn't set in New York or shot in New York in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. We're in
Yeah.
Chicago now.
Chicago, and not that we are at all unique in this, but when David used to live in Chicago, I went with him to a very famous bar, the Green Light, the Green Light. And who should be in this movie but the Green Light? Kismet. No, I'm kidding.
Right, the green light. It's supposedly one of the places that Al Capone would go to, but every bar in Chicago claims that. So
I mean, this
uh,
one's just famous because it's in all the movies.
I guess so. Yeah, it's movie famous.
It
Um,
is.
but so, what's Tucci's role? How would you describe Tucci's role in this film?
So Tucci is like the best friend character to Alec Baldwin, but like
Right.
instead of being like goofy and kind of fun loving, he just by chance introduces the two of them and then is like, girls don't like to suck your dick later.
So
And
okay,
that's
so I
about
think
it.
like Tucci is one of the most interesting and sort of contradictory characters in this movie.
Yeah.
He's sort of a bizarre figure. First of all, I mean, I don't think of Tucci as the best friend, best man, wingman type. I don't know if we'll ever see him fulfilling that role again, actually. It's certainly not like what he's known for. Um, but in it he's sort of playing like this, hey women, right, like women are trash, getting married, like that's not for me. I'm like a bachelor, like a forever bachelor, in fact,
Yeah.
like the kind
Oh.
of bachelor who's sort of really turned on by Alec Baldwin. But this is
Yeah. He
all
does
like
give him a big
subtext. It's
smooch.
There's no textual references to it, and I think that
Fill
this
out
is
your
an
shipping
example of
card.
I'm shipping hard. Yeah, I'm really pushing against canon at this point. But
I
I
mean, do it. I love
I
it.
I think that this is like an example of Tucci when he's not being directed. Um, I think that like for some of the other films where he's sort of a background role, he's still being directed in that he's being blocked. There are shots where it's 100% his face and like he's being given some kind of direction. I think in Men of Respect or whatever, I think he was being told how to play that role. In this one, I feel like he's getting nothing from the director. Um,
Really?
yeah, because you just see him in the background of shots, and he like why is he specifically in that shot? He's often in the same shots with Meg Ryan's parents, just sort of kind
Mm.
of mugging in the background, sort of like making faces and sort of generally being perturbed by the events that are going on.
I guess.
I
But
think
he's
of him in
only
this movie as like, this is Tucci directing himself, sort of beginning his path towards being an actor's director.
uh-huh. Do you like it, or I like it seems like it's not a good thing.
Well, it's just weird. There's nothing normal about this movie. I mean, everything about it is like wrong for like a typical Hollywood screenplay because
Which
it's
I
based
kind of
on
love
a
about it.
stage play.
Yeah,
Um,
I love
but
it.
but it's just like, the introduction to Alec Baldwin's character is he's like standing on a standing
A
in the moonlight
rooftop.
under a
Yeah.
clock tower, and
There's
he's
there's
waxing
definitely
poetic about, oh, women are like a roller coaster,
why
and
get
there's a
on.
sign that says, ride at your own risk.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely weird. Like and the romance, between the two of them, which takes up like the first like
40 minutes, yeah.
30 to 40 minutes of the entire movie. Like we got almost halfway through this before we get like any of the body switching action. There's a
Right.
long part of this movie that is just like a erotic romance because there's a lot of making out and sexy scenes that happen
Right,
too.
but also it undercuts the sexy pretty much at every turn. Like, they'll start to disrobe, but then they'll just kind of stop to have a conversation about like their backstories or whatever, and then it'll cut away, and then it'll cut to like Alec Baldwin looking like he just got, he just finished, and then they're like eating Fruit Loops on the floor. So it's, they're sort of
Just
undercutting the
cut to
sexiness at
black.
every turn,
Yeah.
including the fact that like, there's a scene later where an old man in Meg Ryan's body tells Alec Baldwin to put a baby in me,
Yeah.
which is just gross.
Yeah, that it's weird. Um yeah, like it's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's a very interesting movie.
Right. I think
And
in contrast to Billy Bathgate, Tucci, whereas in Billy Bathgate, Tucci shows up after the hour mark. In this
yeah,
movie, he's introduced in the very first scene immediately, and then he only is in the movie for the first hour, and then he
right.
ducks out for the finale and doesn't get to see any of like the resolution. But he's
No.
introduced, yeah, as like the wingman, sort of setting up these two star-crossed lovers, whatever.
Honestly, an entirely extraneous character does not need to be here.
Right. Well,
They
I
could have
mean,
just met at the party.
you need somebody for Alec Baldwin to sort of confide in about this bizarre happenstance. Otherwise, he's just a crazy guy, who's just talking to himself, you know. So he needs somebody later in the movie, once the body switch happens, to be like, did you ever think that, if two people could switch, could one
But like
person
that could
pretend to be another
literally
person without really
been
knowing them?
anyone. Like it did not need to be his best man at the wedding, Like
Well,
it's
you're
just
gonna have a best man at the wedding anyway because it's a wedding, so why not make it
I
a
character.
character?
Whatever. I don't
But he
know.
has
I think
some bizarre lines. The character's name is Taylor. They call him Tay, and he's got some bizarre lines in this one. One is saying that, marriage, it's inevitable. It's just another step. It's like sliding down a banister that turns into a razor blade. So again,
getting castrated by
it's this,
marriage.
yeah, castration and marriage, and then immediately after that he like gives Alec Baldwin a big old smooch on the cheek, and then while they're getting married, while the actual ceremony is taking place, he's like right at the edge of frame, just kind of like pursing his lips a lot, just going like,
But he is the first one to cheer after they kiss.
well, he's got to
Everyone
put on a
claps and
show.
he's like, "Woo! Yeah, kiss her again."
Right. There's also a scene where we see them at work where I think Alec Baldwin works for like a scientific journal producing microfiche,
I guess.
which for those of you who were born after 1999 is this thing in libraries. It's extremely tiny film that you can zoom in on to it's a more efficient way to store lots of information.
Yeah.
But he's at work and he's just surrounded by like pills and like Advil and like Pepto-Bismol, and like he's clearly been partying all night or something, or going clubbing or something, but they don't really like go into it. He's just sort of there and he's just sort of hungover.
It's the most nothing of a scene, and he's like, hey, I kind of definitely fucked, and Tucci's like, I was gonna fuck that girl.
Right, but without dialogue.
Yeah.
I guess but you can read it as he wanted to fuck that girl, or you could read it as he wanted to fuck Alec Baldwin.
That's so true.
Very possible.
So true.
If you're watching the video podcast, you can see on my shoulder Tucci doing his iconic underbite thing that we pointed out in Men of Respect. So I think we're identifying some key Tucci mannerisms. Also, when he's hungover, he does his patented finger on forehead to show stress, which we talked about in 30 something. He's playing the hits,
Yep.
So like, what is this
really
movie? What is like the theme of this movie? Like, we were talking a lot about body switching episodes in our other podcast, Talking Tropes. So what is the body switch doing here?
I think it's saying trans rights, personally.
It's saying trans rights. Okay, elaborate.
Because Alec Baldwin really loves the old man.
He's not sexually attracted to the old man, and the old man doesn't wear women's clothing because he has the soul of Meg Ryan inside of him.
Right. Exactly. He's just a man, but Alec Baldwin still loves talking to him and being with him, and like is so relieved to like find his wife in this man's body, and like, is like, I'm not sexually attracted, but like, I love you, and if you weren't gonna die in a year, I'd continue just loving you. Like, I don't know, like, I like
no,
the
they seem pretty
intent
on getting her original body back. They concoct a whole scheme where they get the parent to
because she's
arrange...
gonna die.
Right. I mean, there's stakes. They've certainly put in some sort of Hollywood style ticking clock in there. I don't know if that's what it's saying. It's not simply saying it's good to love somebody for their soul regardless of their gender, because I don't even think that is a very like trans accepting sort of issue. It's
really,
I mean, obviously Meg Ryan in this film is not really a trans man. She just sort of wanted to experience being an old man for like the heck of it, for the novelty.
Why not? Like, there's nothing wrong with being like wanting to explore your gender in that way. Like, I don't think that's
but so
bad.
I don't think that is,
and I don't think it's trivializing of like trans people who, are not trying out the identity and then deciding, no, this isn't for me. They just had a different experience.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm not saying that it's trivializing transness, but it's sort of playing in a very 1990s style of, I want to be a woman because of the inherent eroticism of being able to give birth. Like,
well, I don't think he was talking about eroticism, but there was definitely some bioessentialism happening.
Right. So saying like, to be a young woman in a young woman's skin with her smell, a woman's smell, and a woman's, sleep on the woman's side of the bed is a line. To turn to a man and see your man in your bed. Like, it's very, there's a lot of essentializing going on.
There's definitely a lot of essentializing.
Ultimately, all of the gender switching is to to lend itself to this theme that's more that it's just saying the fantasy of a man who knows you better than your parents, who could identify you even when your own father doesn't recognize you, and who would love you even after you've aged, because there's all this reference to being in a being an old married couple,
right?
And it's like, what if Meg Ryan grew old and had a mustache? Would you still love me? And then this is putting that to the test, because now she's an old man.
Yeah.
There was a Futurama episode where they do a lot of body switching, and Leela poses this same question to Fry and asks if he would still be attracted to her if she was the professor, the old man.
Yeah.
And then he turns into Zoidberg, and it's like, would they still be attracted to each other? And then they just make out to prove it, to stick it to each other.
I mean, but this doesn't have that cynicism to it.
What does it have?
I think it's genuine and hopeful. I don't know, maybe I'm a big sap, but like I was touched. I watched this with my fiance, and the two of us, we're like, I love you. I love you. Like, I'm going to love you when you're old.
Would you love
and
me
gross.
if I was an ugly monster? Would you love me? Would you love me if I wasn't so pretty, It's just this classic, like, fantasy of what, romance is.
Right,
that
but
it's
in
like
this case,
totally essentially it's spiritual and not based on, I mean, it's not even like she has the same mind, she's gone senile when she's in the old man's body. Yeah, she starts like, behaving irrationally and forgetting things.
I didn't notice that.
Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong.
She says at one point, I'm not senile. Like,
right. Well, I don't know. I thought that was saying that she was.
No, because remember earlier in the movie, she can never remember things even when she's young.
Okay, well,
there's only certain things.
It's not really essential to my point, which is just that this is less a movie about sort of transcending the bounds of the human experience through and seeing things through another person's perspective than it is the fantasy of being known and having all of your mannerisms be, cataloged, where Alec Baldwin can say, oh, she's not the same. She doesn't eat the same. She doesn't chew the same. She doesn't sit the same, and recognize that, oh, the glint in her eye is gone, and that you would be able to, immediately identify her in the body of an old man at a bar and know that it was her, your soulmate. I think it's that fantasy.
Sure. I love it. It's a good fantasy. Which I think,
all of Meg Ryan's movies in the 90s are fantasies, right?
Sure. But I think, as far as romance tropes go, it's hard to argue that that's a, like, bad one. Or, like, would you say that it's a bad or, like, unhealthy in some way?
I just think that it's not, like, really a character-driven story. It's just like, what if you had the best possible man? who in this case is Alec Baldwin, of all people.
Right.
I will say, I guess there's nothing wrong with fantasy. It's just like, I don't think it's that compelling.
I don't know, but I think it's easy to say. I guess it doesn't have to be compelling for you. I was compelled. Guess I'm a big sap. But I always need love stories with a twist, and in this one, it's that he kisses the Meg Ryan in the old man's body, and he's like, "I love you." Like, right.
That was good.
It was a good old smoocheroo too. Yeah. Like, they were not playing around, and I think the old man who got his, like, this was his first film role at 71. He got this role. He'd been on, I think, Broadway for like years or something.
He was a well-known actor at the time.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no. I think it's I was reading They said he
Oh,
didn't get
really?
his movie break until he was 71, which
Oh,
I
wow.
assume was in this movie.
Oh, well, maybe he looks familiar to me. I don't know.
He's just
Maybe
an old man.
maybe he just looks like an old man.
Yeah, I think he really just looks like an old man. Regardless, though, I think he did a great job. I loved his little monologue about how we're all gonna die. And
Right, that's the other thing that the movie's about, besides just the pure fantasy, because it has to be Broadway, it has to be like literary. So
yeah.
it's the other thing that it's about is how after we get married to someone, we feel like we can't recognize them, like it's not the person who I fell in love with. And then as they age, their body changes completely, but we rediscover what we loved about them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's so it's sort of a sweeping, like, the whole point of life is this. And
Right.
the fact
We're
that
all
Meg
gonna
Ryan in the
die
beginning
no
is
matter what.
so unwilling, is so against having children in a world so terrible in 1991.
I know.
So
But like, David, that's when our parents were having us,
right, I
basically.
know, I'm saying, like,
They're
now
probably right.
now you can start having that conversation, but
No,
like
I mean
back
in
then.
91? Are you kidding me? With your kid with $1 million of college debt and in a pandemic and the
Yeah, but
economy?
she
I
didn't
don't
know that
know.
was going to happen. She was talking about like drugs on the street, which is not a problem for me.
What, David?
Drugs
You
and
weren't
gangbangers.
offered
It's
crack
it's actually kind
cocaine?
of a conservative viewpoint, right? Like it's the cultural
Yeah.
decay of the 90s, and
Yeah.
then we have to solve it with,
Well,
drug
because
war.
she's
But
a
she is a
faux,
communist.
no, she's a faux socialist.
Faux socialist, right?
Because she leaves the party after 2 years,
That
question
was
mark.
one of the most bizarre scenes when Alec Baldwin and old man in Meg Ryan's body are at their Jamaican honeymoon, and Alec Baldwin's just like, "Hey, why don't all the blacks just kill all the whites?" And then Meg
Meg
Ryan's
Ryan's
like,
like, you should give them your money. Blah.
"Yeah, if you think they're so poor, why don't you donate all your money to charity?" Who
Yeah.
cares about the blacks?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very bizarre scene, very 90s, sort of
It's
like
very weird.
trying to like what would he care about in Meg Ryan's like political views at the time?
Right.
Oh, that
Right.
she's class based. She's a class
Yeah.
reductionist, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. It's
Um,
very weird.
the only other thing that I want to say is I want to finish up my Stanley Tucci is playing closeted gay man in
Okay.
this, uh, which is the scene that you referenced at the beginning where Alec Baldwin is talking about how Meg Ryan doesn't do the same things sexually because she's an old man. um, and Tucci is like, she's not giving a blowjob. Let me tell you something. No woman likes to give a blowjob. So obviously it's a reference to, again, what he's saying about marriage, which is that it like takes all the sex and fun out of your life, and that's why he's going to stay a bachelor forever. But also he says no women like to give blowjobs,
That's true.
meaning, if you want to
All the gay guys
hit
I
the
know.
hit the company bathroom, the executive toilets, and just go to town, you know.
I like this queer reading that you've given Stanley Tucci. It's why
Well, he
he's
just
allowed to play gay.
he just seems so like bitter about the two of them getting together, despite and then he says something like, I've never had sex, or like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
sex, I remember that. Like he wants to have sex but he can't, even though he like
right,
goes to all these parties and takes his shirt off and
right.
shows his pecs and whatever. So it just makes me think like he's a closet case.
I don't know if that's a polite way of putting it, but sure.
Well, okay, it's the 90s.
It's the 90s. Oy. Yeah. I mean, listen, again, I'm all here for gay Stanley Tucci headcanons. I'm apparently standing bisexual Alec Baldwin. So
Right. I mean, he doesn't like the old man's feet, I guess, but
no.
that just makes him a foot fetishist, not a not a straight, not a
Yeah.
zero Kinsey scale person.
He kisses the old man.
He does.
He kisses him. I'm just saying.
Doesn't like his feet.
He just doesn't like his feet. Yeah. So do we want to talk about Kathy Bates at all? We mentioned her briefly as our whomst we also for the week. But
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just she does like we do also stan her completely, but she doesn't really have a role in this movie, which is why she didn't come up. She just sort of is giving expositional dialogue saying like, "Hey, my
Dad,
dad's
you've got
dying."
cancer and
Yeah.
your liver sucks. Blurg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blurg. But you everybody knows Kathy Bates. She was in Misery. She was in Titanic. She was in The Office for that one season. That was good.
Yes.
What else? What do you like
I
her
mean,
in?
she's in a lot of things. She has won an Academy Award, 2 Primetime Emmys, 2 Golden Globe Awards. Oh, she's in the 1999 remake of Annie. She's Miss Hannigan in that. Not bad,
That's right. Yeah.
to get. I mean, Kathy Bates being Carol Burnett. I mean, like I think it plays.
She was in Fried Green Tomatoes right before
Yes.
this, which is sort of a cult classic.
Yeah.
Whereas this is kind of not a cult classic.
No.
But maybe it will be after all of you go to see it. for the Tooch.
She's also in the Bee Movie. We cannot forget her role in the Bee Movie as Janet Benson, which is, I believe, the Bee's mother.
Yes, that sounds right. Wait, this is a bizarre trivia thing on IMDb related to Kathy Bates.
Okay.
The day after Kathy Bates won the Oscar for her role in Misery, she filmed a scene with Alec Baldwin where fans asked for their autographs. She later walked her dog and forgot to bring a cleanup bag and wound up using a fan's discarded autograph she found on the ground.
That is unsourced. Funny.
There's absolutely no way to verify it. But that is an Alec Baldwin, Kathy Bates story that is kind of unrelated to this film.
It wasn't even when they were filming this?
Well, they filmed the scene for this, and then afterwards fans asked them for their autographs.
So it was during the filming
I think,
of this
wanted
movie.
Alec Baldwin's.
Right. So funny. That's so funny.
Also, the song Prelude to a Kiss was also on the Glengarry Glen Ross soundtrack. And both of them were stage plays.
Wow.
So that's a weird coincidence.
For a fun bit of trivia, when I was watching this with my fiance, he came in a little bit late and went, "Why is that guy talking like Alec Baldwin?"
Yeah,
and I had to inform him that it was, in fact, Alec Baldwin.
Right. Let's talk about like hair for a second. Like,
Alec
Baldwin's hair in the 90s was crazy. And
so
Tucci's
much.
hair would then fall out. And I think maybe the next time that the two of them acted together is a 30 Rock episode that we're going to get to in 50 million years. And it's just crazy to see that his, like, Alec Baldwin's hair has just gotten more swoopy. And crazy. And
I mean, his hairline,
bye-bye.
His hairline has definitely receded since this film. But
not even really that much. It's just like more swoopy and less black,
I guess. Oof, yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you.
And for your patience over our hiatus from last week. We'll be back at you again next week with another regular Talking Tropes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.